So another one of our occasional situations is where we have two parties that are obviously engaging with me to purchase a property. Let's use a sectional title as a perfect example. Let's say the gentleman is a young professional and his partner is maybe somebody in an industry that has maybe less stable income, so which is not really able to apply for a joint home loan. So what we find is that obviously they in agreement in purchasing this property, but the property can unfortunately be only registered in the one party's name as they are unmarried. From what I've heard, there can be a cohabitation agreement drawn up between the two parties, especially if one of the parties is going to be contributing towards levies or rates and taxes or maintenance of that property. I just wanted to find out from you, what is your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that if the parties are going to have some sort of arrangement along those lines, then it would be very important to enter into some sort of an agreement which stipulates what the contributions are going to be, so that there is no ifs and buts about who has contributed what, and in the event that now they need to decide what needs to happen to this property and there is an argument as to who has contributed and in what respects. So I think that's very important. And yes, to seek legal advice with regard to that, to drawing up that type of contract, I think would be very important as well. If you get married out of community of property, and I think you had a question where most people would be advised, I think in the past, to get married without out of community of property, on the basis that either without the accrual, on the basis that if, for example, one party's estate was sequestrated, that then there wouldn't be any sort of repercussions for the other spouse, and that's not the case. So if what happens is on a sequestration, the solvent spouse's assets will actually be taken into custody, and you have to then, as the solvent spouse, you have to prove that those assets are your assets prior to marriage, or alternatively that you acquire those assets with your own funds. Otherwise, they can form part of any sort of insolvency. So that is quite important, quite pertinent, because I think that sometimes people are under the misconception that that's not going to be the case. That each party's assets, as long as it's my assets, or if it's my, if you are going through a hard time, or you are,
it affects you, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, exactly.
Which
it's the grey area. So,
and in order to wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to end off with?
I think that what we've learned over the years is that these decisions and the decisions that couples need to make ultimately, as they're deciding on getting married, what type of matrimonial property regime, I think they need to really consider it carefully. I think parties sometimes unfortunately rush these decisions. They do not think about them, or don't really apply their minds. And to be honest with you, I think that most couples are in a bubble, which they should be, and they don't really want to think about what would happen if the marriage had to be dissolved, because you're obviously not entering into a marriage thinking about what is going to happen if we get divorced. But unfortunately it is the reality, and it is a decision you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. And so I think that you need to have real discussions, and you need to know what you're getting into. And I think that sometimes also parties don't necessarily know the implications, and they also don't know what the other spouse necessarily has. What are the assets and liabilities that you're dealing with in terms of both parties, and what if anything is going to form part of this pot, or how they're going to deal with whether it's going to be separate estates, or whether it's going to be a joint pot, or whether it's going to be a shared pot. but I think it's just a very, very, very important decision, and I think that both parties need to be upfront with each other, and preferably before they see an attorney, but at least or ultimately when they are consulting, to properly disclose, be upfront with each other, and make a decision that they both agree on, hopefully. And at least then there won't be any surprises. We do find that parties, when they come and consult, sometimes even question whether they've got an antenuptial contract. Has it been registered? Oh my goodness, now I need to go and search for it. It is something that you can easily obtain from the deeds office, because it does need to be registered. But we find that people don't even know how they're married. They don't know if they've got an accrual. They don't know, or if the accrual is applicable. They don't know if there's, if it's not applicable. And obviously, like we said, prior to the prelim judgment, there would be huge implications for a party who doesn't have the accrual applicable. If they were, for example, like I said, a stay-at-home mother who then doesn't have any income and is now reliant on the husband, and would effectively be left out in the cold, so to speak, if there was unfortunately a divorce. And so I just think that it's important for both parties to really think about it, to really know what is the matrimonial property regime that they're going to enter into. So like I said, there's no surprises at the end, because those surprises have huge financial implications for your family, for your children, and
Rather safe than sorry.
yes.
Absolutely. So guys, there you have it. Basically the recap to our conversation with Andrea is always get professional advice before signing important documents, and it will affect the rest of your life. So make sure you get the right advice. Thanks, Anne.
Pleasure.